Hey everyone, good morning. And hey, thanks a lot for taking some time to be with us here this morning and talk about leading in an evolving nonprofit world. And as I was reviewing this and preparing for this morning, really we're leading in an evolving world. And when I looked at a nonprofit world, I think all of us have a different reality. I have a different reality today. I know Kara has a different reality, and all of you have a different reality. And so I'm just curious what your world is. So I just want you to kind of look at that through your lens and what your world is, because some of you are working with the homeless, some of you are working with senior citizens, some with veterans. So your worlds are very different. So as we go through today, just encourage you to think about what your world is. We're going to cover a lot of information here. As an executive coach and peer group facilitator, I work with about 25 to 30 nonprofit leaders on a monthly basis. So I have a lot of conversations and I hear a lot of things of what's going on, at the leadership level. And I'm going to share a lot of information based on things that I've heard and conversations I've had over this year and the past several years. Some of this is going to resonate with you. Some of it may not. That's okay. We're going to cover a lot, and I just want you to be able to walk away with some tangible things and some actions to take. So real quick, that's me. Went to Ohio State. Spent the first half of my career in Chicago. Worked with some great organizations such as the Chicago Youth Centers, Ronald McDonald House Charities, National MS Society. For about 15 years, worked with the National Runaway Safe Line, and then relocated back here about 15 years ago. Started doing a lot of good work in partnership with the Ohio Association of Nonprofit Organizations. So some of you may have heard me speak in the past through OANO. And for the past 3 years, I've been serving on the board for the Charitable Healthcare Network, which is a statewide association here in Ohio, really offering support, advocacy, and resources for free health clinics throughout the state. So that's a little bit about me. Let's jump into what are, some things to think about here. I love this quote: "Being CEO is not a reward, it's a responsibility." And I'm just curious how that lands on some of you. And to put this in context, years ago, I was working internally at an organization where this was not the case. The CEO, the leader of that organization, viewed it as a reward, and it was very apparent. As a result, there was a lot of turnover. I saw the VP, who I reported to, the impact that this position the CEO was taking. I saw the impact it was having on my direct supervisor. I lasted about 11 months. And because that leader viewed this as a reward and not necessarily as a responsibility. So I want to start with that, kind of set the tone here and get you guys thinking about how do you view your role in the chair that you sit in as the leader of your organization. Some aims for today. I like to say aims and not goals. I might get into that here in a little bit, but I pulled it from Simon Sinek. But the aim for today really is for you to identify where you want and need to develop as a leader. Again, our realities are going to be different, so it's going to be different for many of you on what you want and need to develop as a leader. Also, another aim is for you to take action on your own development. How many times do you go to one of these webinars, you go to a conference, you're taking a ton of notes, and you walk away saying, "Boy, that was good," and then your notes sit on your desk for 6 months and you don't take action? So I just want to encourage you, as you're going through this morning, think about what are some of the actions that I want to take or can be taking to improve my own development as a leader. Again, being responsible in the chair that you're sitting in. So a couple of questions for you. And Kara, I want to thank you for including some of these in the promo materials leading up to today, because I hope it got some of you thinking about some of the questions that were raised. Do you believe you're the right person to lead your organization? Fair question, I think. Do you want to be the person leading your organization? And I ask some of these questions really, again, just to get you guys thinking, because I want you to be the best version of you. And answering some of these questions will maybe push you to think a little bit differently about, how do you want to impact the world instead of the world impacting you? What is your role in this world of nonprofit leadership? What about this one? What does your organization require of you as its executive director or CEO today and moving forward? What does life need to look like in the next 30 days, maybe 90 days, before the end of the year? As you're preparing for 2024, what are some of the things that are required of you as the leader to get this organization to continue to advance its mission and continue to make the impact that you guys are really trying to make? So let's do a quick little exercise or activity here. So just on your notes there, just let's rate your leadership level on a scale from 1 to 10. So number 1 is, you know what, I need some work here. All the way to 10, which is, you're crushing it. All right, you're a great leader. And I'm just curious if you put into the chat where you're putting that number. So go ahead and whatever number feels right to you on your own leadership level, just go ahead and pop that into the chat. Okay, we've got some 7s, we got a 6, 7, 7.5, awesome. Great. I'm curious, as you guys are putting these numbers in the chat, if I were to sit down and talk to your leadership team or some of your staff members, what number they would give you. And I'm curious if there's alignment on that leadership level. Something to think about. Why did you choose that number? Ponder that number. Why do you think you chose that number? Why did you give yourself a 6 or a 7? There's got to be something, some characteristic, some ability that you have, or some confidence that you have that is the reason why you gave that number. All right, now think about this next one. What do you think you can do to make it 1 point better in the 90 days, in the next 90 days? What do you think you can do to move that number from a 6 to a 7, a 5 to a 6, an 8 to a 9, to make it 1 point better in the next 90 days? So what are we talking about here? We're talking about some challenges. I'm curious, what would prevent you from making it 1 point better in the next 90 days? And if something comes to mind, go ahead, pop it in the chat. I'm just curious what's on your minds when you think about what are the challenges that I'm facing as a nonprofit leader. You want to go ahead and put some of those in the chat. One that I always hear, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity, but I always hear fundraising. Fundraising is a challenge. And when I'm talking with some of the leaders that I get to work with, I always eventually ask the question, is that a symptom of a deeper issue? Fundraising to me is a result, it's an outcome, right? We're not getting the funding that we feel we deserve or the funding that we need. All right, well, what's the deeper issue here? Is that a symptom of a deeper challenge here? And typically it is. Yeah, we don't have a development director, right? We don't have a coherent plan in place to go out and raise funds. So getting some challenges here, hiring staff, adequate staffing, financial footing, great. Turnover, getting board members to follow through on their commitment. I hear engaging the board. I hear that a lot as a frustration and a challenge. A board executive committee, okay. Great, thank you, everyone. Thank you. So I was curious when I was looking, at what are some of the challenges out there. I turned to Google, like many of us do, and challenges of a nonprofit leader, and 457 million results came back. Right. I also went to Amazon. What books are out there on leadership? More than 60,000 results on leadership. So I know there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of frustrations. There's also a lot of what I like to look at as opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities, I believe, in front of us and how do we know how to take advantage or the best advantage of some of those opportunities. I'm going to share some examples with you now, just to bring home some of the points that I want to make, and I want to reiterate again that the points that I'm coming up with, there's so many more than what I'm going to share with you today, but these are the ones that are the common themes that I've been experiencing this year and over the last previous years. But this is an organization dealing in the affordable housing industry, and we were in a peer group session, and this CEO just painted a bleak picture of their situation. Funding was down. There was no real development plan or fundraising plan in place. She had some frustrations with the board. She just painted this bleak picture. And so we opened it up for the group to start asking her some questions. And we talked about it. And some of those questions that I shared earlier, are you the leader of your organization moving forward? Do you want to be? Came from this actual conversation. It was brilliant. And to have a truth teller in that conversation was what this person needed to hear. As a result of the conversation, this CEO made the very difficult decision to close one of their fee-for-service programs. Now, we say close, but in reality, they hit the pause button, right? This is not a good use of our time. We're actually losing money, and we're having people spend time in that program, and it's better if we take their talents and move them elsewhere. She got really intentional in meeting with the board chair on a weekly basis. She aligned with that chair and said, we need to address these issues that we're having. And together, they developed a plan that would help get them to a better place. They developed a 30-day, 60-day, and a 90-day plan together. And she had that support of the board chair as well as the board. One of the takeaways or one of the results of getting really, really focused over the next 30, 60, 90 days, she was able to bring in $56,000 in the first 30 days. Eliminated a lot of the challenges, a lot of the what I call mental chatter that were getting in the way, and she got really, really focused and was able to have that success in a short period of time. So what's the point in all this? The point is strong leaders have the courage to disrupt the routine. That executive director, that CEO could have very easily just continued to do the usual, not have a regular scheduled meeting with the board chair. In their case, the old way of doing things is they would have a meeting with the board chair a day before the next board meeting. Here's the agenda, here's your role, here's my role. Rather, let's work on this together. They disrupted the routine that they had and really gained some alignment and came together to work on this specific issue. Here's another story I'd like to share with you. There's a health-related research organization. And in this particular instance, I was having a conversation with the executive director, and she shared with me her frustrations with the staff, little engagement in staff meetings. There was low productivity. She knew they had to meet a goal for their campaign year, and at that point, she was really concerned that they were going to fall short of that annual campaign goal. So we talked it through, and some of the actions that she took is something as simple as this: curious questions. In our conversation, I asked her, well, what are you doing to get engagement in those staff meetings? Are you asking them questions? Yes, she was, but typically they were yes or no questions. Do you understand? Any questions about this report? Any questions about the direction we're taking? No, right? We talked about, well, what if you change that into curious, open-ended questions? What would that elicit? What kind of response would you get then if you started to ask those curious, open-ended questions? And there's a book that I want to reference, and I'll talk about it later in a reference sheet, but it's Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. It's great. It's a great read to really get you as a leader thinking about, gosh, what questions am I asking? of my staff in those staff meetings? What questions am I asking, or how am I asking some questions in our one-on-one meetings with staff? What about the board at those board meetings? What are those curious questions that I'm asking? As a result, with this executive director, they did achieve their annual campaign goal. Now, I'm not saying because she started asking curious questions, they achieved their annual campaign goal, but that started to improve the engagement among the team. It started to get them to be more productive and more aligned on the plan moving forward. And they started having more strategic, deeper conversations about what are we doing and how are we going to achieve our annual campaign goal. So what's the point in all this? Strong leaders have a high level of curiosity. So I'm curious, what curious questions are you guys asking in all of your meetings and all of your engagements? It could be a meeting with a major donor. Maybe you're meeting with a volunteer committee, your staff, your board, your one-on-one with your board chair. What are those curious, open-ended questions that are going to allow you to lead to a deeper, more strategic, more meaningful discussion? Here's another example I want to share with you with a senior living organization. And with this particular organization, there was the CEO came on. We were having a discussion with about 6 other nonprofit CEOs. And his situation, or the context of his story, is he came to the group and said, "I'm dealing with this underperforming problem with underperforming team members." And there's a member of his leadership team who's at the director level who was struggling with members of her team and her department. There were a handful of team members in her department that were underperforming. And he came to the group really struggling with, how do I deal with this? How do I get those underperforming team members in that department to start turning things around and producing more? Well, we talked it through, and remember what I said a moment ago about, is that a symptom of a deeper issue? That's exactly what was happening here. And because of the group and some of the questions that were the curious questions that were being asked, and the conversations that were had, here were some of the actions that he took. He realized that he needed to do a better job of holding his executive team member responsible for managing her department and her team. So we flipped that the lens that he was looking through to provide him a little bit more clarity on, hey, you don't need to be worried about what does Simon Sinek say in The Infinite Game? Your role or your responsibility as a leader, you're not responsible for the results. You're responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. And that's exactly what was happening here. So this particular CEO, stronger team and a stronger executive team member in the process. And he came to the realization that I really need to identify the core issue here, right? He was looking at the symptom and how do I alleviate the symptom or address the symptom, when in reality, he came to the realization, I really need to be going to the heart of the matter, the core issue here, which in this particular example, it was the member of the executive leadership team who was struggling to get her own team members to produce more and perform better. So what's the point in all of this? Strong leaders surround themselves with good people. And I share this because in this particular case, the CEO was surrounded with really good other nonprofit leaders. But also what made that a success is this individual made himself vulnerable. You know, he came to the group and said, I don't know how to do this. What should I do? Here's the scenario. It's just, I need some advice and some insight. So he brought a level of vulnerability to the table and took the collective wisdom of the group, and he surrounded himself with good people. And he actually, took action on that particular case. Statewide Trade Association. Here's another example I want to share with you. There is a new executive director for a statewide trade association. And he came in a staff of about 5, and he quickly noticed that there's a stagnant staff here. They're set in their ways. About 3 of the 5 staff members had been there for 10 plus years, right? So they're set in their ways, and it's that mentality of this is the way we've always done things. So that was his frustration or his challenge: is how do I get them re-energized and refocused? So here's some of the actions that he took. He implemented an evaluation program. He started to have regular one-on-one conversations with each of his team members. He started to develop professional development plans for his staff. And I'm curious, how many of you have professional development plans for your team? And I'm not talking about, yeah, we've got a line item in the budget for them to go to conferences. No, how many of you actually have a written out professional development plan for members of your team? How many of you are asking those curious questions of your staff? What do you want to accomplish professionally? Where do you want to be professionally in 3 to 5 years? And how can I help you get there? Let's work together on a plan, and let's give you some opportunities to gain that experience while you're here. And as a result, one of the things that I want to share is this idea of, this comes from the book Traction, delegate to elevate. A lot of times when we delegate, we're delegating just simply to get the work done. We're pushing work away and we're just getting work done. And we're not thinking about what is the training opportunity or the professional development opportunity for those people that are taking on this work. So when I hear delegate to elevate, I look at elevate in 2 ways. Number one, you're elevating the organization, right? We're getting that work done. We're making progress. We're elevating the organization. We're advancing our mission. But it's also an opportunity to elevate that individual who's looking to learn and improve themselves professionally in the seat that they sit in. So when we're delegating, just encourage you to think about, how is this elevating this person? How is this going to elevate the organization? So the other actions that this individual took: weekly staff meeting cadence. It was more of a, hey, whenever we need it, let's have a staff meeting. No, he got more intentional and started having weekly staff meetings to talk about our progress, and to talk about our to-do lists and things that we're working on. As a result, he said, I like coming to work now. It increased the accountability and the alignment among the team, and he just feels like we're all now rowing in the same direction. And we're not all sort of scattering and going in different directions, but we're in alignment. We're in the same boat. We're all rowing in the same direction. So what's the point in this scenario here? Strong leaders develop their people. In this particular story, he got really intentional about those individuals on his team and what success looks like for them from a professional point of view. What do they want to do in their career, and how can we help you get there? And let's put a plan together and start working against that plan to help them develop their skills. I'm going to pause right now just to see, are there any questions? Dylan, I know you were monitoring some of the questions. I'm just curious if there are any questions that are popping up.
No questions as of right now.
All right, I'm answering all the questions, and apparently. But hey, gang, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A feature there, and Dylan will call that out for you. I want to share this quote. Brian Hartline, I heard him speak. He's the OSU receivers coach on the football team, and he said this at a breakfast I attended not too long ago. It's not our job to recruit the best players. It's our job to recruit the right fit players and then develop them into the best players. Yeah, I love this concept. I love that quote. And what this speaks to, from my perspective, is the values, right? I encourage all of you to think about, what are our values as an organization? Do we have clear values? A lot of times when I do strategic planning with organizations and we're developing sort of the agenda and the process and the approach, sometimes I'll get some leaders who say, you know what, we're good with our values and our mission and vision. Can we just get to the tactical type elements and the strategies? It's like, you know what? I gently push back and say, in a way, I say no. We're going to go through that process anyway, because we always are going to learn some things. When it comes to mission and vision and values, we're either going to validate that what we have is true. We might realize that we need to make some tweaks, or we may come to the realization that we need to just scrap everything and start from scratch. All right. But this whole idea of spending some time to ask about what are our values, what do we believe in as an organization, a lot of times then will help us to vet out and bring in the right people within our organization who have the right character. And I love this quote because in my mind, they are bringing in quality athletes in the entire athletic department there, and then they're doing a great job of then developing those athletes. So I share that because I want you guys to think about what are our values and our characteristics as an organization. Are we bringing in the right people who even belong on our bus, right? Our bus is going in this direction. Do we have the right people on that bus with the right characteristics and the right values and the right beliefs that are going to help us advance our mission and make the impact that we'd like to make? So just to encapsulate what we've covered here, strong leaders have the courage to disrupt the routine. They have a high level of curiosity. They surround themselves with good people. They develop their people, right? And again, we're scratching the surface here. These are things that I've experienced, and I'm sure a lot of you have experienced a lot of other different things. There's a lot of other leadership principles to keep in mind. Strong leaders have a high level of self-awareness, right? How much self-awareness do you have as a leader? Have you taken time to just sit back and think about what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? I know some leaders go through the 360 assessment and get feedback from a lot of different people and a lot of different perspectives to really give them a better sense of their self-awareness and who they are as a leader. You know, in all of this, I think I alluded to it earlier about our aims, and I don't like to use the word goals. And again, that comes from the book Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, where goals set us up for disappointment and frustration potentially. And we intentionally put ourselves or unintentionally put ourselves in that situation where if we don't accomplish a goal, we feel less than, right? We feel like we've failed. You know, we had a goal to increase our funding by 25%, but you know what? We only reached 20%. And therefore we're failures. No, you increased your funding by 20%. That's incredible, right? So I like to use the word aims or even targets as, you know, we're looking to increase our funding, or we're looking to have a stronger board engagement. So we're looking for progress, not perfection. I know many conversations I have are around that. Yeah, this thing's got to be perfect before we hit the launch button. What does progress look like? That's why I asked earlier about what do you need to do in the next 90 days to get your leadership ranking from 1 point better, from 6 to 7. What does progress look like? Not perfection per se. Strong leaders never assume. That comes from the book, the 4 Agreements. And one of the agreements is never make assumptions. When we make assumptions, that leads to lack of clarity. It leads to unnecessary drama in our lives. Let's have the courage to ask the questions for clarity so we eliminate any type of assumption that may be there. Strong leaders embrace conflict. That's another one. I started with a quote with Patrick Lencioni, his book called The Advantage. It's all about smart and healthy organizations. And in it, he talks about the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And at the bottom, it starts with trust. Without trust and without a strong foundation of trust, then we can't have what he calls healthy conflict, or what my friend Connie likes to say is robust conversations. It sounds a little bit better. But those strong leaders embrace that second level. They embrace the conflict and the pushback that may be happening in the office or within a meeting. And I'm not talking about where we're having a fight. It's just I don't necessarily agree with the point that's being made or the direction that we're talking about going in. And they have the trust to have then the courage to push back and to have that healthy debate or to have that robust conversation. And when they are able to have that robust conversation and everyone has been heard in that conversation, now we can be committed as a team to move forward in the direction that we choose to go forward in. And baked in to that is the accountability and then the results, right? But it starts with trust, and those leaders then having the courage to embrace that conflict that may arise. Conflict can be very, very good. And so I just encourage you to think about the next time you're in a conversation and there's tension, hit the pause button. Say, hey, here's what's happening. This is good. Let's continue to have this conversation and this debate or this discussion where we're not necessarily seeing eye to eye. Let's just recognize that this is a good thing, and we're going to talk it through, and then we're going to then make a decision, be committed, hold each other accountable. That's going to lead to the results. And speaking of that, a lot of times the results get in the way. That's where the focus is, right? The results, again, is an outcome. It's a result, right? But what are the things that we can control and that we can be doing in the process that will put us in a better position to get those results? And one of them is to have the courage to embrace the conflict. If you're a fan of Jim Collins, good to great. I love this one. Level 5 leadership. Strong leaders are humble. And in today's world, where do we not see that? Just open up any social media platform and you'll see the lack of humility in a lot of posts. So something to think about. But strong leaders, according to Jim Collins, that's a difference maker among strong leaders. Is they have that they're very, very humble. Resource sheet. Threw a lot at you guys here this morning, and I do want to leave you with some resources. Dylan, I believe you're going to put a link in the chat to this resource sheet. I know Kara is going to send a follow-up email to everybody with a link to this resource sheet. But I referenced the Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Mary Lee Adams. In that book, there's a choice map, and that choice map, it describes learner and judger mindsets. With strong leaders today is having that strong mindset from judger to learner. And look, we all as human beings, we judge. No question, we all judge. That's okay. But when if we continue to judge and go down that judger path, it starts to spiral out of control. We start to question ourselves. Imposter syndrome may be setting in. We start to question others. We start asking, why did they do that? What the heck's wrong with me, right? But if we can jump in the middle of that chaos and say, okay, wait a minute, what are the learner questions? Or what's the learner mindset that I can be asking? And that's where those curious questions come into play that I was talking about earlier. Mentioned the 5 dysfunctions of a team by Patrick Lencioni. Number 4, I encourage all of you to really check that out. It's the 4 principles of purpose-driven board leadership. It's by Ann Wallstead of BoardSource. I would encourage you to read that, share it with your board chair first. Have your board chair read that, and that may be a really good foundation for the two of you to have a conversation about some of the concepts in that article. And then I'd like to encourage you to ask your board chair, what if we shared this with the entire board? And then spend some time at the next board meeting talking about the article and some of the concepts. Are we doing some of the things that they're talking about in that article? The Advantage, Smart and Healthy Organizations by Patrick Lencioni. I talk with a lot of organizations about a board assessment. How is our board doing? How does the board view itself? Do they ever do a self-assessment about how they're doing as a board? I've got a bunch of questions or statements that you can use to do a board assessment. impact story. Many organizations have a challenge in simply just telling their story of impact. I hear it all the time. We need to tell a better story. We need to get our message out. Well, what is that story of impact that you're sharing that's going to help in that meeting with a potential donor? So Mary Frances Porter is a great resource. I hear this all the time is overwhelm. I've got 17 things on my plate. I don't know where to start. And I have a hard time with prioritization. Visit the Eisenhower Matrix. Some other great resources there. So I just encourage you to check those out. So I want to take a moment and revisit this rate your leadership level. You already put a number down, 6, 7.5, maybe 8. But right now, and again, Dylan, if you could put that link in the chat. But right now, I'm curious, based on everything that I've shared with you this morning up to this point, what's one new result that you would like to achieve in the next 90 days? What's one new result for you as a leader that you would like to accomplish in the next 90 days? And when you think about that new result, what's one thing you think that you should start doing? And then what's one thing you feel you should stop doing that's preventing you from reaching that new result as a leader? So take some time, take about 30 seconds or so to just jot that down. And then when you're ready, go ahead and share that in the chat. I'm just curious what people are thinking based on what we've been covering here today. And just share with us in the chat. What's something you feel you should start doing as a leader? So if you're ready, go ahead and type into the chat if you're comfortable. Thank you, Christy. Slow down and ask curious questions to help advance team and individual development. That's awesome. Yeah, there's no downside to asking those curious questions. Improved one-on-one with board chair to truly hear each other. Yeah, if any of you are familiar with Dean Pulliam, I had a conversation with him a couple of months ago. He came and spoke to all of my nonprofit groups, and he really was pushing to have that one-on-one regular weekly meeting with your board chair. And one of the things that he shared, which I thought was really interesting, was it's not just to say, hey, here's how I'm doing and here's where I need your support. It was really, hey, board chair, what are you doing to push the board to be more engaged? So I know a lot of times it feels like you as the executive director or CEO, it's all on your shoulders to engage the board and get them to do things that you want them to do. How can you put that responsibility on the shoulders of the board chair? It really is part of their role, is they need to encourage and engage and inspire, the rest of the board to be committed. What do you think you guys should stop doing? I'm curious, is there anything that you guys feel you should stop doing as a leader that's preventing you from achieving the result that you want to achieve? Go ahead and put that in the chat. I'm curious what you guys are thinking there. I know there's a lot of stuff you guys want to stop doing, so don't hold back here. Being in the weeds. Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, being pulled into the weeds of the operation. Thanks, Katie. Yeah, there's an interesting analogy. If you've heard this analogy about taking on their monkey, I forget where this analogy comes from, but how many times are you in your office and a staff member comes in with their problem and they're expecting you to fix it? And then you go ahead and you take the time to roll up your sleeves and fix it. You just took on their monkey. You just added more to your own plate. How do we protect our time as a leader and look at that as a learning opportunity? We talked about delegate to elevate a moment ago, but how do we not take on the monkey and rather coach and advise, ask curious questions in that moment to help that staff member learn and develop and figure it out with your guidance. That's great. Oh, hey, Dean. Yeah, thanks for the mention of support of the CEO board. Yeah, excellent. Great. Procrastinating on decisions. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, I'd be curious. The exercise, if the Eisenhower matrix, check out that resource. That may help with that procrastination and just helping with what's important, what's urgent and important right now. What's urgent and less important that might be pushed off to next week. What's what's important but urgent, right? Can I delegate that? And if it's not important and not urgent, well, do we really need to pay any attention to that right now? All right, so that Eisenhower matrix is a really helpful tool to maybe help you get into a better headspace on making some of the decisions that need to be made in the short term. Great. All right, well, hey guys, thanks for sharing that. I'm curious, and I end every meeting that I have with any client or any group with these three questions. What are two things you learned or acquired today? Where are you going to take action? And then lastly, what are you thankful for? So I want you guys to think about those questions. If you feel comfortable in sharing anything in the chat, please do so. But I encourage you to think about this as you continue on throughout your day and answer these questions. What are two things that I acquired or that I learned today? Where am I going to take action? That's a big one. Again, I said it at the beginning. The worst thing we can do is walk away and say, that was nice. But what are some actions that you're going to take based on some of the things that you heard here this morning that you're actually going to take a step forward on? And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's got to be progress. What does progress look like in the next 30, 60, or 90 days as a leader? And then what are you thankful for? I'm thankful for the opportunity to get to work with nonprofit organizations and leaders like you. I made that intentional decision about 5 years ago to go all in, and I continue to be blessed. And I'm very thankful that I get to do what I get to do today. That's something I'm thankful for. So I just encourage you to take some time between now and throughout the day to answer some of those questions and just kind of think those through. And ask your staff, what are you thankful for? And at the end of every meeting, maybe these are some questions that you ask your staff, or at the end of a board meeting. I'd be curious to hear what kind of response you guys get at the end of a board meeting. You might be surprised. And typically when I have someone from the outside come in and talk to all of my nonprofit groups, I'll ask this because it's a gift to that person. Because they may hear something from the group that they never thought they would hear. Two things you acquired. Again, your reality is going to be different from mine, which is going to be different from others. And you might be walking away with two things that are completely different from someone else. And then where are you going to take action? That's where the accountability comes into play. Where are you going to take action? And then what are you thankful for? I appreciate it. Okay, Dylan, I'm going to open it up to questions. I've gone through what I needed to get through here this morning, but I'm just curious if there's any questions out there from folks who listened in.
It looks like we just got one in the chat, actually. On any suggestions on how to navigate or move forward when the relationship between the executive director and the board chair has been strained or damaged, and that trust has been broken, and how to resolve that?
Yeah. Well, what immediately comes to mind is that step 2 in the 5 behaviors of embracing conflict and having the courage to have that conversation. Go in it with the curiosity that we talked about. Not knowing all the details, Amy, I would suggest just calling a meeting, having a coffee, a sit down face to face with the board chair. You know what? I'll do this. There's a great book called Fierce Conversations, and in it, it's a format on what you can do to tee up a tough conversation. And you know what, Kara, I'll go ahead and send that document to you if you want to share that with everyone. But it comes from the book Fierce Conversations, and it's a really helpful format for you to tee up the conversation, to say, hey, I want to talk to you about our relationship, you as the board chair and me as the executive director. Part of that format is you taking responsibility also. I realize that I'm at fault for this, so you taking on some responsibility may alleviate some of the strain that your board chair might be feeling in that moment. And as you tee it up, you open it, you end it with a curious question. How do you see it from where you sit? And you sit back, you be quiet, and you give them an opportunity to respond. I would encourage you also, what are some, if trust has been broken, and I don't know if trust has been broken, if you don't trust the board chair, or if the board chair doesn't trust you, or if it's a two-way street, that might be a question to ask the board chair. I feel like our trust isn't where it needs to be. What can we do to rebuild that? Hey everyone, there's my contact. Feel free to reach out to me. Happy to have any conversation with any of you about some of the things that you're dealing with or opportunities that are coming your way. You just need a sounding board. Just happy to talk with whomever about what you can be doing to become a better leader within your organization. So my thanks to Bradyware, Dylan, Kara, and the rest of the team. Just appreciate this opportunity. And hey everyone, just thank you for the work that you do, and just keep doing your meaningful work in a meaningful way, and keep impacting the world. We need it, and just thankful for everyone like you to be doing what you're doing. So thank you, and have a great day.